things to say about a lot of stuff. This is going to take some time. It's important to me, and that's just how it is. I don't know if you can hear me because there are a lot of very loud vehicles driving by, but I want to do this outside right now. Um, so I would like to speak about more of the context of my affair and what it actually was for me. And there might be people out there who don't want to hear it, who don't want to know how I felt, who don't want to know anything like that, who don't want me to post anything like that, who don't want me to post anything about it publicly. That's fine. I'm sorry to hear that in terms of how it might affect you, but at the same time, this is my life, and I have to do what I have to do. So, context of my affair. It's going to be probably a long-winded series of videos. I had a digital affair for probably between 2 to 4 months when I was married to my ex-wife several years ago. And this affair took place when I was very innocently just looking for friends to play video games with in an online community that I was already part of. And this person noticed me in one of the social media platforms that this community was using to communicate and organize game events in and things like that, and just make friends, just talk about video game industry, just talk about anything. She noticed me. I was just being myself in there, and she noticed me eventually. And would talk here and there to me, just in small ways. I didn't even realize that this person was a woman until later, when she actually told me that she was. She approached me and she spoke to me via direct message while I was just being myself. And initially, I didn't really know what to think about that. I actually held my boundaries for a while. My ex-wife and I were going through a fair bit of stuff at the time, at least in terms of our connection. Wasn't that it was weakened, it wasn't that it was in trouble, it was that we had personal issues, not together, but we were going through some personal issues individually that led us to spending less time together, unfortunately. And that was really difficult in the context of, and just in different contexts, but, and that was actually part of why I was seeking out new friends, because I was trying to just lean into hobbies and things that I really enjoyed doing, while we kind of sorted out some of the problems that were going on, not between us, but just in general, when things at that time in my life, at that time in my relationship, were happening. And so I was just being myself in this circumstance, and this person, her name is Laura, she noticed me just kind of being myself. After a couple of weeks, she actually just sent me a direct message and indicated that she was developing a crush on me. We hadn't really directly spoken before that. Maybe just in very, very small roundabout ways. And like I said, I didn't even know that she was a woman until she told me, which happened in the direct message eventually. I held my boundaries for a while. She told me she had a crush on me and that it was, all of that. I held my boundaries. I told her that I was married. And then I continued to just kind of be myself in there with everybody else. And was part of different community events and things like that. And eventually, she continued to speak to me, and we discovered that we had some common interests. Some interests in common outside of the context of that community. Um, and so we started speaking about some of that stuff. And I was still holding my boundaries for a while. Then eventually, um, you know, just by circumstance, I stopped holding my boundaries after a certain point. And it had to do with some of the history that I had gone through in my relationship, and it was also, I mean, it was part of that, and it was also just part of just the fact that I wasn't a strong enough man to continue to have a friendship with this person with the appropriate boundaries. It was partly because of what had happened in my past, and it never would have occurred had that stuff not happened in my past in that relationship. I'm not going to divulge that information because it's not, that's not what this video is about. But really, what was going on was what I've said. And we actually connected pretty quickly. Like even before I let my boundaries be crossed, I felt, she was somebody who I felt really friendly towards. She was somebody who we actually communicated really well together, and I saw her as a good friend. But I wasn't going to persist in a close friendship with her in any sort of immediacy, because she was a woman, and that's just kind of where my relationship was at the time. The two of us were just kind of sorting out different things. My wife at the time and I were just kind of sorting out different things individually. And one of the things that we struggled with was, and this was a long time ago, we were codependent. One of the things we struggled with was friendships with, the other person having friendships with people of the opposite gender, just because of the stuff that we had both been through individually in our past with other people, but also because we were codependent. And so I saw Laura as somebody who I connected with, we communicated well. She was somebody who I wanted to be friends with, but I was just gonna keep it as a casual, hey, how's it going? Okay, cool. Yeah, I saw this, I read that, all right, take care. That's just where it was for me. And then after my boundaries were crossed, but I allowed it to happen. She never forced it. I allowed it to happen. She did persist. She told me how she felt and that it was continuing on. But, and that persistence was something that added a lot of pressure to a circumstance that was just it was just happenstance in a lot of ways, that's where Heather and I were. But also, that wasn't even the primary reason. The primary reason had much to do with the past that we had gone through together, as well as just the fact that I allowed my boundaries to be crossed after a certain point. I did. That's true. I did. Laura was somebody, and still is somebody, she was very nice to me. She was very nice to everybody in that community. And so, this affair took place digitally. Like I said, we spoke about meeting up after a certain point, but for me, it wasn't something that I was ever really going to do, because I was married. But at one point, she told me that the entire affair was something that lived in her mind. and I thought I understood what she meant at the time, and that she was telling me that she didn't really want to meet up because she was also married, and I was married and she knew that, and I wasn't going to do it anyways. It wasn't something that was actually on the table for me, but when she initially started speaking about it, she wanted to meet at like a Comic Con, I believe, that I, and so when I entertained that thought, it was purely intellectually, like she had mentioned, and that's where I was with the affair as well. This is a digital affair that lives in the mind, and not in the physical, because that's just not something that I would ever do, regardless of the fact that I am having an affair digitally. It's not something I'm going to do. So, she sent me a picture of herself at one point, just of her face, and I was attracted to her. But that was not the driver of my affair. I was attracted to her physically, yes. I only saw her face, and her fingernails and things like that. That was just something that she sent me pictures of her own choosing. And I sent her one or two of myself, and that's how it goes sometimes with an affair. We connected on a lot of levels during that affair, and it was, it's hard to talk about because, it is kind of hard to talk about still, because, I never wanted to be that guy to anybody in terms of the context of being married. I never wanted to hurt my wife. I never wanted to be somebody who I never saw myself as somebody who would ever have an affair. I never saw that coming in my life. And so, eventually I stopped the affair. I'll probably go into more detail about that. I see that the duration on this video is already winding down, so I'll go into more detail about some of that stuff as well. But there's more there that I want to get to about the whole thing. It's very important to me to be completely upfront about all of this, healthily, and so I'm going to do that. But one of the things I will mention while I still have a couple minutes left is part of what was going on for me at the time as well was in my personal life, I was trying to figure things out. What I wanted to do with my life, how I wanted to do it. And I actually had told Laura about some of the stuff that was going on in my day-to-day life, in my, some of the stuff that my wife and I would do. I actually told Laura about the fact that my wife at the time, that she enjoyed, equestrian activities, things like that. And Laura actually asked me, after I told her about that, if we were wealthy people. And I didn't really know what to say to her, because I didn't want to tell her, some personal stuff about the context that I was living in with my wife. But it wasn't because I was trying to, frame myself up to Laura. It was because I was trying to protect my wife and my marriage. But mostly, I was trying to protect my wife and her mother and everybody in so much that I was trying to keep some things private in the circumstance that we were actually living in. And I will detail more of that after I upload this. So yeah, that's the start of this.